The 6th of June, 1944. Under the code name Operation Overlord, US, British, and Canadian troops cross the English Channel and begin landing on the Normandy coast in France. This operation becomes known as D-Day and is the largest amphibious invasion in history, deploying more than 160,000 Allied troops on air, land, and sea. Following the Normandy landings, the French resistance movement intensifies its efforts to disrupt German communications and supply lines. German military commanders, particularly those who have served on the Eastern Front and experienced the brutality of anti-partisan warfare there, radicalize their response to real and perceived resistance activity. One such ruthless response unfolds in the town of Tulle in central France. On the 9th of June 1944, after French resistance fighters attack a German garrison, the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich retaliates with mass arrests. The SS rounds up over 3,000 men, aged 16 to 60, and after a brutal selection process, 99 men are publicly hanged from lampposts and balconies. Their bodies are left on display as a warning to the local population. However, this atrocity will not remain unpunished, and the perpetrators will pay for this crime with their lives. The Second World War began on the 1st of September 1939 with a German invasion of Poland. The German invasion of France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands started on the 10th of May 1940 and became known as the Battle of France. As part of the armistice agreement France signed with Germany on the 22nd of June 1940, France was divided into occupied and unoccupied zones. Germany occupied northern France and all of France's Atlantic coastline down to the border with Spain. A new French government was established in Vichy in the unoccupied southern part of the country. The Vichy government declared neutrality, but it was bound by the armistice provisions to cooperate with Germany. The formation of the French resistance was a gradual process. However, as the German occupation authorities and the Vichy regime became increasingly brutal and intimidating, they inspired the formation of paramilitary groups dedicated to both active and passive resistance. In rural areas, members of the resistance were called the Maquis. The Maquis were known to be ready for anything and eager for vengeance against the Germans. In February 1943, about 91,000 German soldiers surrendered at Stalingrad, marking a turning point in the European theater of World War II. Among the units affected by the shifting tide of war was the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich. Having spent 3 brutal years on the Eastern Front, Das Reich gained a reputation for its harsh anti-partisan operations, which included massacres, mass deportations, and scorched earth tactics. By early 1944, the division was transferred to France to regroup after suffering heavy losses in the East. Under the command of General Heinz Lammerding, they established their quarters in the Montauban region, where they focused on integrating new recruits from various backgrounds, subjecting them to strict military discipline and Nazi indoctrination. Between May and July 1944, the men of Das Reich conducted numerous expeditions to eliminate the growing threat posed by the French resistance, particularly in the southwest and center-west regions. Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS, visited the division in April 1944, urging them to use the same ruthless tactics they had employed against Soviet partisans. Rather than prioritizing reinforcements of German positions in Normandy, Das Reich was ordered to suppress resistance fighters and intimidate the civilian population. Their actions included public hangings, mass shootings, looting, and widespread reprisals, resulting in over 120 documented atrocities during this period. Das Reich's campaign of terror left a trail of violence across southwestern France, but their brutal tactics also emboldened local resistance movements. The growing threat posed by the resistance, particularly in the Corrèze region, soon came to a head. By early June 1944, the French resistance in Tulle, led by Jacques Chaput's Marquis FDP group, prepared a bold operation aimed at disrupting German defenses and seizing weapons and supplies. On the 7th of June, one day after the Allies landed on the beaches of Normandy, the offensive began with a bazooka strike against the barracks of the German 95th Security Regiment. By mid-morning, key positions like the town hall, post office and train station had fallen to the resistance fighters. At the train station, they encountered only 18 railway watchmen and one employee, Abel Leblanc. Though the watchmen declined to join the Marquis, they remained inside the station. By early afternoon, German forces temporarily retook the station. Mistaking or deliberately misidentifying the watchmen's white armbands, German troops executed all 18 watchmen and the station worker without questioning. Leblanc was the sole survivor, managing to escape moments before the massacre. Fighting resumed the following day, with the resistance targeting German strongholds including the girls' school in the north, the weapons factory, and the Souilhac school in the south. At the girls' school, the battle intensified, culminating in the building being set ablaze. Around 5 p.m. amidst the confusion, German soldiers attempting to leave were gunned down, some killed by their own grenades. Following the German surrender, the Marquis identified and summarily executed 9 members of the SD, which was the intelligence agency of the SS and the Nazi Party in Germany under Hitler's regime. By the evening of the 8th of June, most of Tulle was in resistance hands. German losses were estimated between 37 to 50 dead, with up to 60 missing, many likely executed after capture, and around 25 to 37 wounded. Resistance casualties were significantly lower, though exact figures remain unclear. According to the self-published accounts of the SS Sturmbannführer Otto Weidinger, a regimental commander in the 2nd SS Division Das Reich, many dozen German soldiers were killed after their surrender, and numerous cadavers bore evidence of mutilation. This story is confirmed by Heinz Schmidt, doctor to the 3rd Battalion of the 2nd SS Division Das Reich. This battalion was commanded by SS Sturmbannführer Helmut Kämpfe. On the 8th of June, around 9 p.m., the first tanks of the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich arrived in Tulle from 3 different directions, catching the resistance fighters off guard. The Marquis, unprepared for such a formidable force, immediately retreated to the surrounding hills without engaging in further combat. The SS established their initial command post in the Souilhac district near the weapons factory, later relocating to the Hotel Moderne the following day. Throughout the night, SS patrols secured the town and established a perimeter around it. At dawn on the 9th of June 1944, the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich initiated a brutal reprisal against the civilian population of Tulle. Under the pretense of identity checks, more than 3,000 men aged between 16 and 60 were apprehended, often from their homes, and assembled in Souilhac Square, facing the Tulle weapons factory. The detainees were then divided into columns, with selections made by SS officers, notably Walter Schmald of the Gestapo, the Nazi secret police. By late afternoon, 120 men had been marked for execution. Following urgent appeals from local authorities, 21 individuals were spared, reducing the number of condemned to 99. These men, their hands bound, were then led in groups of 10 to predetermined execution sites throughout the town. Nooses had been prepared on balconies, lampposts, and trees, creating a macabre scene that stretched across several hundred meters. The executions were carried out with chilling efficiency. Each victim was forced up a ladder, where SS soldiers placed a noose around their neck before removing the ladder, leaving them to hang. In some instances, the executioners hastened their death by pulling on the victims' legs, striking them, or shooting them with submachine guns or pistols. Witnesses reported that soldiers, in fits of rage, would violently push victims who hesitated at the sight of the gallows. Throughout this atrocity, SS officers and soldiers displayed a disturbing indifference to the suffering they inflicted. They gathered at the Tivoli Cafe, located opposite Suyak Square, where they drank stolen wine and listened to loud music from a gramophone, all while the executions unfolded nearby. Following the hangings, the SS ordered that the bodies would then be thrown into the river without burial. However, after negotiations led by local officials, the Germans permitted the internment of the bodies on the site of a garbage dump in K, located outside the city. The corpses were buried promptly and anonymously, without any identification permitted. Following the brutal hangings on the 9th of June 1944 in Tulle, the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich intensified its campaign of terror against the local population through mass deportations and further atrocities. On the 10th of June, the remaining hostages at the Tulle weapons factory underwent a selection process similar to the previous days. SS officers including Gestapo member Walter Schmald, in collaboration with French authorities, divided the detainees into groups designated for deportation or release. A total of 311 men and 660 young members of the Chantier de Jeunesse, a youth labor organization established by the Vichy regime, were transported from Tulle to the town of Limoges. After another round of selection, in which the milice, a paramilitary force aligned with the Vichy government, played a crucial role, 162 men and all members of the Chantier de Jeunesse were freed. The remaining 149 prisoners were deported to Dachau concentration camp on the 2nd of July, where tragically, 101 of them did not survive. The reign of terror did not end there. Between the 11th of June and the 31st of July, the laboratory of the Tulle weapons factory was repurposed as a torture center. The milice, collaborating closely with Schmald, subjected detainees to horrific abuse. On the 21st of June, 3 militiamen, none older than 20, poured acid onto the facial wounds of a man they had just beaten with a blackjack. Additionally, on the same day, another raid resulted in 80 men being seized and sent for forced labor in Austria. The German troops finally withdrew from the Corrèze region on the 16th of August 1944. In total, the combined actions of the Wehrmacht, the German armed forces, the Waffen-SS, the military branch of the SS, and the SD claimed 218 civilian lives in Tulle. The SS's brutal tactics succeeded in their aim, to sow terror among the population and undermine support for the resistance. In the aftermath of the Tulle massacre, several key figures faced varying degrees of justice. One such individual was Walter Schmald, a Gestapo officer directly involved in selecting victims for execution. After the German retreat, Schmald was captured by French resistance fighters on the 15th of August 1944, and just a week later, on the 22nd of August, he was executed without trial by his captors. Another figure connected to the massacre was Otto Weidinger, the final commander of the SS Regiment der Führer, which participated in the brutal reprisals. Weidinger was detained between 1947 and 1951 and interrogated about his involvement. Although prosecuted for his voluntary service in the Waffen-SS, an organization declared criminal at the Nuremberg trials, he was ultimately acquitted. After his release, Weidinger authored several books on the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich, which have been viewed in France as revisionist accounts. The most notorious figure was General Heinz Lammerding, commander of the entire Das Reich division. In 1951, a French military court sentenced Lammerding to death in absentia for his role in the massacre. He lived freely in West Germany, and multiple attempts to bring Lammerding to justice failed. He died of cancer in 1971 at the age of 66, having never faced punishment for his role in the atrocities at Tulle. The SS officer who met the most horrific fate following the events in Tulle was Helmut Kämpfe, the commander of the 3rd Battalion of the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich. Kämpfe, holding the rank of Sturmbannführer, was captured on the 9th of June 1944 by a group of resistance fighters led by Sergeant Jean Canu from Colonel Georges Gangouin's brigade. This brigade was part of the Marquis de Limousin, one of the largest and most active French resistance groups fighting for liberation. Canu handed Kämpfe over to Colonel Georges Gangouin, who, in response to the Tulle massacre, ordered Kämpfe's execution the following day. Though the exact circumstances remain unclear, according to a French informant, the 34-year-old Kämpfe and captured Wehrmacht soldiers were burnt alive in a captured German military ambulance in front of an audience. When the SS division discovered that Kämpfe had been kidnapped, SS Sturmbannführer Adolf Dickmann, commander of the 1st Battalion of the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich and Kämpfe's personal friend, led his troops on a brutal search of the surrounding area. 2 local men were shot dead by SS men under Dickmann's command, and when Dickmann eventually reached the outskirts of the village of Oradour-sur-Glane, he found Kämpfe's handcuffed, burnt body inside a German field ambulance, with the remains of other German soldiers. After seeing his friend's fate, the enraged Dickmann ordered his men to raze the village and kill the inhabitants. The SS soldiers rounded up the entire population and concentrated them on the market square. Thereafter, they separated the villagers by gender. Members of the 1st and 2nd platoons took the 203 men to several barns on the edge of town and locked them in. The 3rd platoon then locked up 241 women and 205 children in the village church. The SS men set fire to the barns and threw grenades through the windows of the church, shooting those who sought to escape the flames. Only 7 villagers survived the massacre. After 642 inhabitants, including 7 Jewish refugees, were dead, the company looted the empty dwellings and then burnt the village to the ground. There were many tears shed for all the victims of Nazi terror.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.